Welcome back to the evaluation section of our Opik series. Today we are going to talk about a RAG example and explain the different components of the evaluation setup within this RAG example. Once again, I have a notebook in which I imported my necessary libraries. I configured my Opik client. I set environment variables like my project name and my LLM keys. I'm going to benchmark essentially an OpenAI model versus a Google Gemini model. So I set an OpenAI key and then the Google API key. And then in the next step here, we are going to load from our Comet documentation the context and set up a vector store with the Chroma integration from LangChain. Just an easy example. And here we have two classes essentially to make predictions with our LLMs. One for OpenAI and one for the Gemini model, which are based on this base class. Effectively, what we're doing here is just retrieving documentation from our vector store and then calling the LLM client. As you can see here, always have a client, and we want to get some completions. I've opted for the class setup here because we have the basic setup is the same, but the interface between both model providers, of course, is a little bit different. And as you can see, once again, we use our Opik track decorator here to get all of the traces within Opik. Let's run this one so that this is defined. And then I have a little setup here to iterate through using both of these RagBot classes. Can run this little snippet here to see if it works. We can collapse this to the side a little bit and then hop into projects, and we can see Comet Assistant, that's how we called the project, has gotten a new entry. And here we have the traces and spans for the call to OpenAI. And then the other one, this one is Gemini. So we validated that our RagBot classes work. So we can go ahead and come to the actual part of this video, which is the dataset creation, which is what I wanted to show you guys. So that's what we're focusing on today, just creating the dataset. What I mentioned previously is just to give you the context on the example, because the following two videos, I think, are also going to be based on the same notebook, and the link will be below. So you can run this for yourself and see how it behaves. So now let's come to the main part of this video, which is creating the evaluation dataset. An evaluation dataset is a collection of examples that represent the kinds of inputs your LLM application will encounter, along with expected outputs or reference answers. Think of it as a validation set in traditional machine learning. And there are two ways to create datasets in Opik. We have already explored one beforehand, which is via the UI. If we go back into our project here, for example, I can select different traces that we have here, and then I can say add to dataset. That's the one method. And the other method is the one that I have right here in my notebook. So I have a dataset defined here inline, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create the dataset via our Opik client. Go instantiate the Opik client, and then just call get or create dataset. We are going to give this a name and a description, and then just use the insert method on the dataset object to pass in all of our dataset items. You'll notice here that I put a v2 at the end because I already have this dataset set up in my Opik account. But I just wanted to show you what it looks like if you create a fresh dataset via the programmatic approach. So here we have Comet Questions, which is the dataset that I had defined beforehand. And it's been a minute since I created that. So now I just created the fresh one, just to show you what it looks like if the things will not be duplicated within the dataset. So if you have entries in there that are the same, there's not going to be any duplicates in your dataset. That's something that's always good to know. Now you can add as many items as you need, and each item can have custom fields depending on your use case. You can really define what you want in here, whatever your application needs as inputs and outputs. Feel free to make it as verbose as you want. And for an effective evaluation, consider creating multiple datasets that focus on different aspects of your application. For example, a dataset for common user questions, a dataset for edge cases or potential failure modes, and a dataset for specific capabilities like reasoning or summarization. You can also create datasets from existing traces, as I've shown before. Filter down to the ones that you want, and then just add them to the dataset. And that's it for the part of creating the dataset. In the next video, we will be exploring how to define metrics that will score your LLM outputs against this dataset. Thank you for watching.